Hey, Sens fans, welcome to Season 4, Episode 14 of the Senstennial Podcast, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. Today, we're excited to welcome a newcomer to the show as we're joined by special guest Josh Wegman. So, Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. We're happy to have you on. And for those that don't know, Josh writes all sorts of NHL articles for The Score. And in doing so, he's written several articles on the Ottawa Senators. So we're excited to pick his brain about some of the stuff he's written about and share that with everyone listening. So I'll let other Matt here kick us off.
Yeah, Josh, thanks so much for coming on. We're really excited to have you, and I'll just dive right in. So, as we all know, it was hot Pierre summer until we got into the season. It was, a bit mild Dorian. But what are your thoughts on Ottawa's underwhelming results after the high expectations that, we all had in the offseason?
My personal expectations were always tempered a little bit. I really liked the offseason they had, and I definitely thought they would improve, and I think they have in certain ways. But my expectations were always tempered for a couple reasons, mainly because it's really hard for young teams like this to take that next leap from rebuilding team to actual playoff team. I think we kind of saw that with New Jersey last season. I thought they were kind of in a similar spot after they got Dougie Hamilton. They looked really good on paper. But once they hit the ice, they kind of face planted a little bit, and Ottawa did a little bit of the same thing to start this season. And just another reason my expectations were tempered were because the Atlantic Division and the Eastern Conference as a whole is just so difficult. Like obviously Tampa Bay went to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals. They're still really good. And the Leafs, as much as people dunk on them for their postseason failures, they've been one of the better regular season teams in the league over the last few years. And then there's Boston, who I thought would be a playoff team, but I don't know if anybody expected them to be historically great, which is what they have been. So it's just a really tough division to claw your way out in. And the Metro is obviously super deep. So it was always going to be tough for them to earn a playoff spot. But so I didn't think they'd necessarily be a playoff team, but I did think they would be better than where they currently stand.
I think a lot of us expected, some regression from at the very least Boston and Florida, and we see that with Florida, but Boston said no, we're going all out here, and Allmark's giving a Vezina caliber year, so I hate it. It's terrible, and I really wish the Senators were better.
But again, like New Jersey, maybe they're just sort of a year behind schedule in the sense where after a full year after they have the splashy offseason, then they finally start to put things together and learn how to win games as a young team, because I really do think that takes time. So next year might be the year where they really take that leap, especially since that they probably won't have as busy of an offseason this year, so they might be able to catch teams a little by surprise maybe next year, but we'll see, obviously.
Yeah, I think that Melnick and Dorian did a lot of damage a couple of years ago when they set their very unrealistic timeline for when this team was going to start being competitive. I think a much more realistic time is that we want to be hitting our window, when, say, guys like Brady are halfway through their big boy contracts, right in that sweet spot where you have a critical mass of young talent aging up. I think we keep putting ourselves in a situation where we create these what I would consider to be unreasonable expectations of the growth that we're going to do year to year. And that certainly doesn't help either. But considering Ottawa's unimpressive start to the season, is there anything that you would pinpoint as being the main issue with the Senators team, or perhaps a number of issues that you see that are holding them back from reaching that next level?
I don't think it's ever just one thing. I thought the Josh Norris injury really hurt. I know a lot of teams go through injuries, but to lose such a key piece, I thought it really exposed some of their lack of forward depth. Like I remember early in the year, Derek Brassard was playing some top 6 minutes, or not necessarily minutes, but a top 6 role, which probably isn't ideal at this stage of his career. And then, the blue line, there was always going to be some question marks about that. Obviously, Shabbat, Sanderson, Zub, three really good players and key pieces moving forward. It was really good for them to lock up Zub. But that other spot in the top four, Hamonic, a little past his prime. So that was always going to be an area of concern. And honestly, when they got to a certain stage of the season, I think it was really key for them to get off to a good start, because last year they also got off to a bad start and then got hot down the stretch, but it was kind of too little too late. And it looks like this year they're gearing towards the same thing. But I thought after the rough start this year, they probably should have made a coaching change. Again, it's nothing against DJ Smith per se. He's not that he's necessarily a bad coach, but he's the 7th longest tenured coach in the league. All the guys who have been around longer than him either have won Stanley Cups or Jack Adams. So I thought they kind of needed just a change of voice there. Sometimes the message just gets stale, but it's probably a little too late for that now, and probably not worth it at this time, and probably won't happen until the ownership situation is resolved.
Yeah. And I was actually good to get to the coaching later, but I mean, it creates a nice segue to get into that now. And you wrote a piece on DJ Smith and Ottawa's coaching situation back in November. And I was going to ask you if a coaching change is what the team needs to take a step towards playoff contention. And with what you just said there, I think you're kind of stating that or implying that. But, is there something about the coaching specifically that you think this team needs to take a step forward?
Again, I think it's more so just eventually that message gets kind of stale, especially if you're not winning games. So that's part of it. But I think the second part of it is, DJ Smith was a defenseman in his NHL playing career. And before he joined Ottawa, he ran the Leafs D. So there was kind of this expectation maybe that he should be a good defensive coach, but during his time, they've never really had good defensive results. And again, this is not just necessarily on the blue line. Obviously, there's maybe a personnel hole on the top four, but just team defense as a whole, the forwards, the D, everyone buying in, you haven't really seen that. I think their results this year are improved and they're like middle of the pack, but you just haven't seen that substantial growth in that regard. So team defense as a whole has probably been the one thing that's really set them back this year and in previous years.
And I find in a Canadian market as well, like there's increased pressure on coaches to get results. And I can't remember exactly what his ranking is in the league for tenure, but I believe he's in like the top 5 of longest tenured coaches right now. And since like being replaced or what have you. And what's interesting is I ran a poll today, and it was sitting at 435 votes before our conversation tonight. And it was, what would you consider the most important factor for the Ottawa Senators going forward? And I said, acquiring top 4 defensemen, firing DJ Smith and bringing in a new coach, firing Pierre Dorion, or something else. And 60% of people said firing DJ Smith. Now, Ottawa's special teams, their power play and penalty kill, have improved drastically from last season, but their 5-on-5 play has just been dreadful. So, it's almost like, you wish you could take the special teams of DJ Smith and instead get, some coach who's established to really fit in and help them with everything else. But obviously that's not going to happen. But I think it just goes to show that in a Canadian market, if you're not getting results and your team has an offseason like the Sens did and expectations are higher, it seems like the barrel of the gun moves towards the coach rather than the players to kind of get some results.
And yeah, obviously you bring up a really good point about the Canadian market, and there's always added pressure playing up here and coaching up here. But you see it just all throughout the league. Coaches have such a short lifespan. Like the fact that he's the 7th longest tenured coach in the league, and this is only his 4th season. That just kind of goes to show how much coaches are recycled. But you were mentioning about their 5-on-5 play this year. I was actually doing a little bit of digging into that earlier today, and I didn't realize. So they have the worst PDO in the entire league. So they're, hold on, I have it right here. They're 5th last in save percentage, but dead last in 5-on-5 shooting percentage. So they've been a little unlucky in that sense, especially because they have some really good shooters in their top 6, but sometimes you just don't get the bounces. And you can't pin it all on that because there have been other issues, obviously, but they haven't really been able to catch a break in that regard either.
And I think going to the coaching change, it ultimately comes down to the ownership, and that's the big elephant in the room that everybody is always wanting to talk about, but it doesn't get talked about until that data room opens up. And that's the frustrating thing, because I've been beating the drum since the start of the season, 15, 20 games in. If the Sens aren't at 500, they need to let DJ Smith go. At both of those points, they were not at 500, but there was clearly something going on behind the scenes. And then obviously the news came out that the coaching change was probably going to be put on hold because of ownership. And so I completely agree in the sense that DJ Smith is definitely not the coach to take us anywhere near playoff success. And quite frankly, you hear conjecture about how defensemen who come up from the AHL look better because they're getting coached by Coach Mann down in Belleville, and then everything just goes to hell in a handbasket when DJ gets his hands on them. So it's an unfortunate situation to be in, because you'd obviously love to get rid of the coach now to save your season, but they don't want to make any substantial moves because new ownership may want a certain direction. So it's a very frustrating situation to be in as a Senators fan.
Absolutely. And the one thing you kind of always see when a coach gets hired in the midst of a rebuild, like DJ Smith did, you almost kind of view them as a sacrificial lamb, in the sense where no coach usually survives the rebuild. Like, even you look at Andre Tourigny in Arizona, and by all accounts, he seems to be doing a really good job with that horrible roster. But by the time they're actually good in however many years from now, like 3 or 4, there's just such a small chance that he's still the guy there. So there's just always that revolving door in coaches, and it's rare to see one make it through a rebuild.
It definitely begs the question: how long will Tortorella last? Switching gears, as we talked about the defense, with Ottawa seemingly always looking for a defenseman. Should they probably be at the point to move on from the whole specific handedness and just improve the position?
See, I think it just really depends on, if you're bringing a lefty in, can he play the right side? Is he comfortable doing so, or is he willing to give it a shot? Like, because I don't, like, you guys would probably know better than me, but I don't think Shabbat's ever played on his offside.
He has a little bit this season. Okay. Like, he'll swap with he did it mostly with Brandstrom. They would switch sides. But that's really the only time it's ever really happened.
Yeah, and I remember reading something about in rookie camp, they tried Sanderson on the right side, but then once he got to main camp, they pretty much played him on the left side exclusively. So I don't know if either one of those guys can make the move to the right side, but it's just really tricky, right? Because certain guys have these certain preferences, and especially players like Shabbat and Sanderson, who are 2 of your franchise cornerstones. Ideally, you want them playing at a position that maximizes their abilities, right? So again, it all just comes down to preference. So it's just someone would kind of have to step up and say, hey, I'm fine to do this. It's not a big deal, but it is a big deal in some regards. Like, it changes you a little bit, but someone just has to be comfortable there.
Do you think anybody that could possibly be available sort of fits the mold for Ottawa, as in is good at defense and is an NHL player? How the heck are you, Sens fans? The NFL playoff action continues. We are one step closer to Super Bowl 57 and for the NFL divisional round. Check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take a shot at an even bigger payout with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. Boost your NFL winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. Heck, I think there's going to be some excellent games coming up with the NFL, and let's make a lot of money. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. New customers can bet $5 on the NFL divisional round and get $200 in free bets instantly, only at the DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN.
I think you're looking at players with term here, though. Obviously, like Chikrin would make sense too, in a sense, but the asking price seems to be really high there, so they might get outbid if that's who they're looking towards. But otherwise, I would probably wait for the offseason unless you're getting someone with term. Like, I know there was the report out there that they're interested in Matt Dumba. I don't really see why that would make sense unless you're signing him to an extension as part of a trade. But Michael Russo, who covers the Wild for The Athletic pretty closely, he's kind of been saying that Dumba hasn't been the same player since he tore his pec a few years back. So he's someone I would kind of not be too interested in, especially he's not the biggest guy, but he plays a really physical game. And, you kind of you amend him for that, but it's not necessarily the type of game that ages well over time. And he's about to be, close to 30, around that. So he's someone I would probably proceed with caution with, maybe in free agency if the price is right and he doesn't really have that good of a market, then you go target him then. But he's not a guy I would be looking to necessarily trade for at this time.
Yeah, we kind of made a video about the Matt Dumba situation, and we talked about his pros and cons, and we essentially came to the conclusion that you're trading for a guy who would be an upgrade on Travis Hamonic, but really, what does that mean for the team? And defining the word upgrade, that can be something that has a lot of different levels on the spectrum of NHL talent. And Matt Dumba used to be a very good defenseman, and I'm sure if these rumors had popped up a few years ago, people would be jumping all over them because he was a much better player back then. But yeah, like you said, since that injury, it hasn't been great, and I think there will be other options in free agency that the Sens might want to look at. If Severson ends up there, if the Devils don't re-sign him, I think he's a guy who they might want to look at for the to improve the right side, especially because Hamonic's contract expires this year. So something like that, I think could be a good move. But ultimately, like you just said, it depends on what the player wants, what the contract is, because the Sens, they can give DeBrincat a qualifying offer for next season, but they need to extend him. And they're going to have to extend Jake Sanderson in the near future. So although they're shedding money, they're going to need to spend some on a couple other key players that could put them close to the cap. So, yeah, all that to say, don't think Dump is the right fit, but I think there are other guys out there who maybe they should pursue, whether it's during this season or if they have term or in the off season, if there's some free agents out there.
For sure. Again, yeah, if you're not getting someone like Provorov or Chikrin, it's best to just wait till the off season when there'll be more options out there. There'll be more player movement. You'll have more cap flexibility, and maybe by then you can get Zaitsev's contract off the books somehow, and that'll free up even more money. And yeah, I don't know. There's going to be some options in free agency, though. One guy I kind of was thinking of, I was just looking today, like not the sexiest name or anything, but a guy like Nick Jensen, who's just always been really solid defensively. Washington has a ton of free agents. They have Orlov this year too, so who knows if they'll be able to bring him back. But I could see someone like that being a fit, where kind of like the same idea as Hamonic, like a veteran who can play in a top four with a young, good offensive defenseman, but obviously someone just significantly better than Hamonic would be ideal.
That's yeah, I mean that's basically really what we're looking for, right? It's just someone better than Hamonic, and they don't need to be sexy. I would actually argue it's better if they're not sexy, because then it means that they'll be affordable. You know, we have enough sex appeal in our blue line between Sanderson and Shabbat that you know, we just need a homebody who can play defense and not get burned every single game. Lastly, Josh, thanks again for coming on. But one final question for you is, where do you see the Senators going in the remainder of the season? We've seen some ups and downs. We've flirted with the 500 mark. But where do you think the Sens ultimately land after the 82 games?
Yeah, you know, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, right? The start was super bad, but then they went on a bit of a run there, and now they're kind of coming back down to earth again. So I could see them getting hot again down the stretch maybe, but I just think it's going to be too little too late for a playoff spot. I mean, they're something like 9 points out now, and there's a good chunk of teams ahead of them. And a lot of those teams I think could be buyers at the deadline, where the Senators I think will probably stand pat. But once the ownership situation gets resolved, there could be a higher internal budget too. So I think the offseason could be an exciting one, even if it won't be as splashy as the last one. But you know, you want to win as many games down the stretch to get the team that momentum going into next season and that winning feeling. But at the same time, a top 10 pick in this year's draft could be really nice. It could be a good trade chip again if they want to move it, or they could get a really nice piece that could help them in a few years once everyone's starting to make a lot of money. I do want to say I do like the contracts for Kachuk, Norris, Stützle, Batherson, Shabbat. Those are all, I think, super team friendly, and they're all going to age really well. And they've set a nice bar in a sense where Sanderson's next contract probably won't exceed any of those, even if he makes a leap, let's say. So I think they're set up super well cap-wise once Zaitsev is off the books. So
yeah,
I think
key asterisk there once Zaitsev is off the books.
Yeah, you might have to, you know, pay a cost to get it off, but it
yeah,
might be worth it for next season, right? So yeah, I really like where they're headed, but I think this season it's probably just going to be too little too late.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of throw one more at you because I'm curious for your opinion on it. Didn't have this one on the agenda, but you know there were a lot of rumors that Ryan Reynolds was very interested in being part of an ownership group for the Ottawa Senators, and now we know that not only is he interested, but the NHL is actually encouraging bids to have Ryan Reynolds in them. So, you know, what do you think that something like that, where Ryan Reynolds becomes the face of an ownership group that owns the Ottawa Senators, what do you think that does for the city and for the organization in general?
I mean, I don't know how anyone could think it would be negative. Like Ryan Reynolds, right? Everyone likes Deadpool, so yeah, I think it would be fantastic just to have a very well-known, likable celebrity uh, being a minority owner on an NHL team. I think it'd be great for the league, great for the team, great for the market, and you know, whatever ownership group wins out, it seems like he's going to join, barring something unforeseen. And that ownership group is probably going to have deep pockets. And as you know, all great organizations are built from the top down. So having a new or having a new ownership group with deep pockets, and again a face like Ryan Reynolds that can do what he does and make everyone happy, I think is an absolutely great thing.
Cool. Well, that's really all we had for you tonight. So thank you so much for giving us your opinions and your insight. And yeah, it was great getting to chat with you. Time kind of flew by there.
For sure. Yeah. Great chatting with you guys as well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. For everyone watching or listening, you can find Josh's content at Twitter at Josh Wegman _ and the last name spelled Wegman. So you can find him there, or you can find him via the Score, either the app or the website. You can actually just search for Josh Wegman there, and you can see all the articles that he's written. And yeah, check out some of the ones we talked about tonight. So, Josh, thank you for your time. We really appreciate having you on. Yeah. Is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I got nothing to actually plug right now, but I appreciate the Twitter shout out and whatnot. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah, no problem. And one last thing before we go here, In case you missed any of our tweets, we've been nominated for Best Sports Podcast in the 2023 Faces Magazine Ottawa Awards, so that's super cool. We'll include we'll include the link in the description to vote for us. You can vote once a day up until, I believe, February 15th or 16th. So for anybody watching or listening at home, please go vote for us. We're hoping to rack up some votes, and we'll see if we can, potentially come out with a win. So as for our podcast on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Senstennial and YouTube, Instagram, and Reddit at the Senstennial. So thank you again, Josh. Thanks everybody for listening and watching. Really appreciate your support, and go Sens go.
Go Sens go. Thanks, guys.
Go Sens go.